The battlefield was a sea of chaos, an endless expanse of smoke and fire that stretched as far as the eye could see. The human warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, their armor dented and scorched from countless battles fought under the shadow of despair. Each soldier carried not just weapons but the weight of survival on their backs, families waiting in distant colonies, hopes for peace buried beneath layers of ash and blood. They had been at war with the alien forces for what felt like lifetimes, though it had only been years. Years filled with loss, sacrifice, and unrelenting hatred. The aliens weren't mindless beasts. They were intelligent beings who moved with precision and purpose, their sleek ships cutting through the atmosphere like blades slicing silk. Their technology was advanced beyond comprehension, yet it didn't shield them from the ferocity of humanity's will to survive. Every skirmish ended in stalemate, neither side gaining ground nor conceding defeat. It wasn't just a war over territory or resources, it was something deeper, primal. A clash of ideologies, cultures, and existences so fundamentally different that coexistence seemed impossible. Amidst this storm of destruction stood one man, a warrior whose name had become legend among his people. He wore no insignia, no rank markings, but everyone knew him by his presence alone. His eyes burned with determination, hardened by every life lost, every friend fallen. He was a leader without title, a fighter driven by duty rather than glory. For him, there was no choice but to keep fighting, not because he believed in victory anymore, but because surrender meant extinction. Each day brought new horrors, new scars etched into both body and soul. The air crackled with energy blasts, the ground trembled beneath colossal footsteps of mechanized titans, and cries of anguish echoed across the wasteland. Yet amidst all this madness, there lingered whispers, rumors of something strange happening behind enemy lines. Stories spoke of an alien queen unlike any other, her beauty said to be unmatched, her voice capable of bending even the strongest wills. Some claimed she walked among her troops clad in shimmering robes, commanding loyalty not through fear but through sheer magnetism. Others whispered darker tales, that she sought more than conquest, that her intentions were enigmatic and dangerous. But these were just stories, fragments of hope or dread woven together by exhausted minds desperate for meaning in the face of senseless slaughter. To the human warrior standing at the forefront of battle, such tales held little sway. What mattered was the fight ahead, the next strike, the next breath drawn against overwhelming odds. Still deep within the recesses of his thoughts, curiosity flickered faintly, a question unanswered, a mystery unresolved. What if the rumors were true? And if they were, what then? It happened during a lull in the fighting, when the battlefield momentarily fell silent save for the crackling embers of burning debris and the distant hum of alien machinery. The human warrior crouched behind a shattered ridge, catching his breath while scanning the horizon for signs of movement. That's when he saw her, or rather, felt her presence before laying eyes on her. She emerged from the haze like a vision conjured by fever dreams, her form radiant against the grim backdrop of ruin. Her skin shimmered faintly iridescent under the pale light of a dying sun, and her long hair flowed around her like liquid silver. She was tall, statuesque, and undeniably alien, yet there was something hauntingly familiar about the way she carried herself, with grace, power, and an almost unbearable allure. She stepped closer, unhurried, as though the battlefield belonged to her alone. Around her neck hung intricate jewels that pulsed softly with an inner glow, casting faint shadows across her sharp features. Her eyes locked onto his, piercing through layers of armor and resolve alike. They weren't cold but warm, inviting, even tender. The warrior tightened his grip on his weapon, unsure whether to raise it or lower it. Something about her defied logic, made him question everything he'd known about the enemy. "You fight well," she said finally, her voice smooth and melodic, carrying a cadence that seemed to resonate within his chest. "But why do you persist? Why cling to this endless cycle of destruction?" Her words caught him off guard. No taunts, no threats, just a simple question posed with genuine curiosity. He hesitated, searching for some hidden trap, but found none. Instead, there was only sincerity in her gaze, a quiet intensity that demanded honesty. "We fight because we have no other choice," he replied gruffly, his voice roughened by smoke and exhaustion. "Your kind invaded ours. We defend what's left." A flicker of sadness crossed her face, subtle yet unmistakable. And so the story repeats itself. One side claims justice, the other necessity. But tell me, human warrior, what is it you truly seek? Is it vengeance? Survival? Or perhaps, she paused, tilting her head slightly as though studying him anew. Something more. Her tone shifted then, growing softer, richer, wrapping around him like velvet. Join me, she whispered, taking another step forward. I can give you everything you desire. Power beyond your imagining, freedom from this ceaseless war, a future where suffering ends. All I ask is your allegiance, to stand beside me, not against me. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The world narrowed to just the two of them, the sounds of war fading into white noise. Her offer hung heavy in the air, tempting and terrifying all at once. Everything he wanted? Could it really be possible? The thought sent a shiver down his spine, not out of fear but uncertainty. Was this a trick? A ploy to weaken humanity further? Or was she speaking the truth? He glanced at her again, noting how effortlessly she commanded attention. There was no malice in her expression, only conviction, and something else he couldn't quite place. Compassion? Longing? Whatever it was, it unnerved him. This wasn't the ruthless conqueror he'd expected. This was something else entirely. I don't trust you, he said bluntly, breaking the spell momentarily. Why should I believe anything you say? She smiled faintly, as though amused by his defiance. Trust is earned, not given freely. But consider this, what have your battles brought you thus far? Pain. Loss. Nothing changes, does it? Join me, and together we can reshape this world, not through force, but through unity. Her words struck a chord deep within him, stirring doubts he'd buried long ago. Unity. Peace. The very ideas sounded foreign now, relics of a forgotten past. Could they ever be real again? He shook his head, trying to clear the fog clouding his thoughts. Even if I believed you, he muttered, how could I abandon my people? My brothers in arms. Her smile softened further, becoming almost maternal. You wouldn't be abandoning them, you'd be saving them. Imagine a world where swords are turned to plowshares, where your children grow up knowing only prosperity instead of war. Isn't that worth considering? The weight of her proposal settled over him like a cloak too heavy to bear. Every instinct screamed caution, warned him to reject her outright. Yet despite himself, a part of him yearned to believe, to hope, that maybe, just maybe, she spoke the truth. As the silence stretched between them, he realized the decision before him wasn't merely about allegiance. It was about faith. Faith in her, faith in himself, and faith in the possibility of a better tomorrow. The warrior took a step back, his boots crunching against the charred earth beneath him. He needed space, not just physical distance but mental clarity. Her presence was intoxicating, her words weaving a tapestry of promises too vivid to ignore. He clenched his fists tightly, knuckles whitening as he struggled to steady his racing thoughts. Everything I want, he repeated aloud, testing the phrase as if tasting its bitterness or sweetness. Did he even know what he truly desired anymore? Days spent waging war blurred together until survival became the sole focus, overshadowing dreams once cherished. Her luminous eyes followed his every move, patient yet probing. Yes, she affirmed, her voice imbued with a hypnotic certainty. Power, peace, purpose, all within reach. You need only take my hand. She extended one slender arm toward him, palm open, fingers adorned with delicate rings that sparkled like captured stars. The gesture was simple, yet laden with significance. Acceptance. Surrender. Transformation. His heart pounded erratically, torn between skepticism and longing. Power beyond imagination. Could he wield it responsibly? Would it corrupt him, twist him into something unrecognizable? And peace. The word tasted bittersweet on his tongue. How many nights had he lain awake, envisioning a world free from conflict, where laughter replaced screams and fields bore crops instead of graves. Purpose, too, called to him, whispering of a legacy greater than mere survival. Could following her lead fulfill those yearnings? Yet doubt gnawed relentlessly at the edges of his resolve. Trust did not come easily, especially when forged in the crucible of war. Her allure was undeniable, her confidence magnetic, but history taught harsh lessons about seductive promises cloaked in honeyed words. Betrayal often wore the mask of benevolence, striking when defenses faltered. Could he risk everything, the lives of his comrades, the fragile hope of eventual triumph, for the chance at something potentially fleeting? His gaze flickered to hers, searching for cracks in her composure, hints of deception lurking beneath her serene exterior. But her expression remained steadfast, unwavering. She exuded authenticity, conviction radiating from her very essence. Perhaps that was what unsettled him most, her absolute belief in her own righteousness. In her eyes, joining her wasn't betrayal, it was salvation. A bitter laugh escaped his lips, startling even himself. Salvation, he echoed mockingly, shaking his head. Is that what you call it? Abandoning my people for the promise of paradise. Anger simmered beneath his words, born of frustration and confusion. He wanted to hate her, to dismiss her offer outright as the manipulative ploy it likely was. But hatred required distance, detachment, and she refused to grant him either. You misunderstand, she countered gently, tilting her head as though peering into his soul. This isn't abandonment. It's evolution. Humanity has reached a crossroads, warrior. Continue down your current path, and annihilation awaits. Choose mine, and you ascend to heights unimaginable. Her conviction unnerved him, rooting him to the spot despite his desire to flee. Heights unimaginable. The phrase resonated deeply, tapping into dormant ambitions he'd long suppressed. Could she truly deliver on such grandiose pledges? Or was she merely exploiting vulnerabilities laid bare by years of relentless warfare? Time seemed irrelevant now, each second stretching into eternity as he wrestled with indecision. The battlefield faded into background noise, reduced to static compared to the internal tempest raging inside him. Hope battled fear, ambition clashed with loyalty, and somewhere amidst the turmoil, a kernel of desire dared to bloom. Desire for change. For respite. For redemption. But could he pay the price? Could he live with the consequences of his choice, whichever path he ultimately chose? The warrior's hands trembled as he tightened his grip on his weapon, the cold metal grounding him in reality. His mind raced, thoughts colliding like meteors in a chaotic sky. She stood there still, calm and composed, her ethereal beauty untouched by the carnage surrounding them. Her offer hung in the air, heavy and unyielding, pressing down on him with a weight that felt unbearable. Could he take her hand and walk away from everything he had sworn to protect? Could he turn his back on the countless lives depending on him, on the sacrifices already made? No, he said finally, the word emerging hoarse and strained. It cost him more effort than he cared to admit, as though rejecting her was akin to denying a part of himself. I can't. Her expression didn't falter, but something flickered in her eyes. Was it disappointment? Sadness? Or perhaps, pride? He couldn't tell. She lowered her hand slowly, letting it fall gracefully to her side. You choose to continue this war then, she stated, her tone devoid of judgment yet tinged with resignation. Yes, he replied firmly, though his voice lacked the conviction he hoped to project. I won't abandon my people. Not for anyone, not even for you. For a moment, silence reigned, broken only by the distant rumble of artillery and the crackle of flames consuming the remnants of the battlefield. The alien queen regarded him with an unreadable gaze, her shimmering form illuminated by the dim glow of destruction. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled, a soft, enigmatic curve of her lips that sent a shiver down his spine. Very well, she murmured, almost to herself. So be it. Before he could react, she raised a hand, and the air around her seemed to ripple like water disturbed by a stone. The jewels around her neck flared brightly, bathing her in a radiant light that forced him to squint. When the brilliance faded, she was gone, leaving behind only a faint trace of warmth where she had stood moments before. The absence hit him harder than he anticipated, a void yawning open in her wake. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt bereft, as though something vital had been ripped away. But there was no time to dwell on emotions. The roar of approaching engines snapped him back to attention, and he turned sharply, raising his weapon once more. Alien forces surged forward, their advance relentless and merciless. The reprieve she had granted him was over, the war resumed with renewed ferocity. Shouts erupted around him as his comrades rallied, their voices blending into a cacophony of defiance. He joined them, charging into the fray with every ounce of strength he possessed. Yet even as he fought, her words lingered in his mind like a haunting melody. Everything he wanted. The phrase looped endlessly, taunting him with possibilities he couldn't afford to entertain. Each blow he struck, each life he took, carried the weight of her promise, making the act feel hollow somehow. Was this truly what he wanted? Or was he simply clinging to a cause because it was all he had ever known? The battle raged on, brutal and unrelenting, but the warrior found himself distracted, his movements less precise than usual. Doubts clawed at the edges of his focus, threatening to unravel the discipline he had honed over years of combat. He pushed them aside, forcing himself to concentrate on the task at hand. Lives depended on him. Failure was not an option. As the hours dragged on, fatigue began to set in, both physical and mental. His body ached, muscles screaming in protest, but it was nothing compared to the ache in his chest. The memory of her voice, her touch, her offer, it haunted him, refusing to fade. What if she had been telling the truth? What if she truly could end the war, bring peace to a fractured galaxy? The questions swirled like a maelstrom, pulling him deeper into uncertainty. And then, amidst the chaos, a glimmer of movement caught his eye. High above the battlefield, hovering just beyond the range of human weapons, floated a sleek alien vessel. Its surface gleamed like polished obsidian, reflecting the fiery landscape below. At first, he thought little of it. Enemy ships were a common sight, but something about this one drew his attention. It wasn't attacking, merely observing, its presence deliberate and calculated. Through the haze of smoke and dust, he saw her again. Standing atop the ship, silhouetted against the crimson sky, she watched the carnage unfold with an expression he couldn't decipher. Her posture was regal, commanding, yet there was a sadness in her eyes that pierced through the chaos. She wasn't gloating or reveling in the destruction, she looked disappointed. Their gazes locked once more, and for a brief instant, the world fell away. The sounds of battle muted, the heat of explosions faded, and it was just the two of them, suspended in a moment outside of time. Her lips parted as though she intended to speak, but no words came. Instead, she raised a hand, palm facing outward, in a gesture that seemed equal parts farewell and invitation. Then, without warning, the ship ascended rapidly, disappearing into the clouds. The spell broke, and the battlefield roared back to life around him. The warrior staggered, overwhelmed by the sudden return of noise and violence. His heart pounded wildly, torn between relief and regret. Had she come to witness his resolve firsthand? To confirm his rejection of her offer? Or had she hoped, against all odds, that he might change his mind? He would never know. But as he turned back to the fight, gripping his weapon with renewed determination, he couldn't shake the feeling that she hadn't given up on him, not completely. Somewhere deep inside, a seed of doubt remained, planted by her words and nurtured by his own restless yearning. The war continued, but the warrior's convictions wavered, shaken by the ghost of a promise he couldn't forget. The days that followed were a blur of bloodshed and exhaustion, each sunrise bringing fresh waves of despair. The warrior fought with mechanical precision, his body moving through the motions while his mind remained elsewhere. He tried to convince himself that he had made the right choice, that loyalty to his people outweighed the allure of her promises. Yet, the memory of her lingered like a phantom, haunting his every step. Sleep eluded him, stolen by dreams that felt more like memories, visions of her shimmering form, her voice whispering promises of a world reborn. During the rare moments of respite, he found himself staring into the distance, searching for any sign of her return. His comrades noticed the change in him, exchanging worried glances when they thought he wasn't looking. "You've been distant," one of them remarked cautiously during a brief lull in the fighting. "Something on your mind?" "Nothing important," he lied, forcing a tight smile. But the truth was, everything felt important now. Every decision weighed heavier, every loss cut deeper. The war had always been brutal, but now it felt personal, as though he was fighting not just for survival, but to prove something to himself. To prove that he hadn't made a mistake. At night, when the fires of battle dimmed and the stars emerged like distant witnesses, he allowed himself to think about her. What was she doing now? Had she moved on, dismissed him as a stubborn relic of a doomed species? Or was she watching, waiting for him to break? The thought unsettled him, not because he feared her wrath, but because he feared his own weakness. What if she came again, offering the same deal? Would he refuse her a second time? Or would the weight of doubt finally crush him, forcing him to reconsider? One evening, as the camp settled into uneasy silence, he climbed to higher ground, seeking solitude. From this vantage point, the battlefield stretched out below like a scarred canvas, littered with the remnants of countless struggles. The wind carried the scent of ash and sweat, mingling with the faint metallic tang of spilled blood. He sat cross-legged, gazing at the horizon where the alien forces lay entrenched, their glowing encampments pulsing faintly in the darkness. A sudden rustle behind him startled him, and he turned sharply, half expecting to see her standing there, bathed in moonlight. Instead, it was one of his closest comrades, a wiry soldier named Kale who rarely spoke unless necessary. "Thought I'd find you here," Kale said quietly, settling down beside him. For a while, neither of them spoke, content to let the silence stretch between them like an unspoken understanding. Finally, Kale broke the quiet. "You've changed since that day." It wasn't a question but an observation, delivered without accusation or judgment. The warrior sighed, running a hand through his dirt-streaked hair. "I don't know what you mean." Kale chuckled dryly. "Don't play dumb. You've been carrying something big. And whatever it is, it's eating at you. So spill it. What happened out there?" For a moment, he considered lying, brushing off the inquiry with vague reassurances. But something about Kale's steady gaze disarmed him, coaxing the truth to the surface. Slowly, haltingly, he recounted the encounter, the alien queen's appearance, her offer, his refusal. As he spoke, the words tumbled out faster, as though releasing them eased the burden pressing down on his chest. When he finished, he braced himself for ridicule or disbelief. Instead, Kale nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds like she gave you a hell of a choice." "That's one way to put it," the warrior muttered bitterly. "But it doesn't matter. I made my decision." "Did you though?" Kale pressed gently, leaning back on his elbows. "Or are you still making it? Seems to me like she planted a seed in your head, and it's growing faster than you'd like." The simplicity of the observation struck a nerve. "What am I supposed to do?" he snapped, frustration bubbling over. "Just abandon everyone? Throw away everything we fought for because some alien queen waved her pretty hands and promised me the stars?" "No," Kale replied evenly, unperturbed by the outburst. "But maybe you should ask yourself why her offer bothers you so much. If it were meaningless, you wouldn't be losing sleep over it." The truth of the statement hit him like a hammer, leaving him speechless. Kale was right. He couldn't stop thinking about her, about the possibilities she had dangled before him. It wasn't just the promise of power or peace that haunted him, it was the idea that maybe, just maybe, she represented a chance to escape the cycle of destruction. A chance to rewrite the rules of existence itself. When morning broke, the warrior descended from the hilltop with a heaviness in his chest, but also a newfound clarity. He didn't have answers, not yet, but he realized that ignoring the questions wouldn't make them disappear. Whether he liked it or not, the alien queen had changed something fundamental within him. And as much as he wanted to deny it, part of him wondered if she might hold the key to ending the war, not through conquest, but through compromise. For now though, the battle raged on, and he returned to the front lines, his resolve tempered by the knowledge that his journey was far from over. The days that followed were a nightmare wrapped in despair. The alien queen's promises of unity and peace seemed like cruel mockery as her forces launched an offensive unlike anything the human warriors had ever faced. Her dominance was absolute, her strategy flawless. Wave after wave of advanced weaponry and relentless troops descended upon the battlefield, shattering defenses and leaving devastation in their wake. It wasn't just brute force, it was calculated precision, each strike aimed at dismantling not only the human army but their spirit. Entire battalions fell within hours. Cities once teeming with life became smoldering ruins, their inhabitants either fleeing or captured. Communication lines faltered under the weight of chaos, supply chains collapsed as resources dwindled to nothing. The human resistance, already stretched thin, began to fracture. Fear spread faster than fire, whispering doubts into even the strongest minds. Was this truly the end? Had they been fighting for nothing? Amidst the crumbling world, the warrior stood firm, but barely. His body ached from wounds both visible and invisible, his strength sapped by sleepless nights and endless battles. Yet what drained him most was the growing sense of futility. Every step forward felt like 2 steps back. Every victory, no matter how small, came at too great a cost. And through it all he couldn't shake the image of her, her luminous eyes watching him, her voice echoing in his mind, "Join me." It was during one particularly brutal skirmish that the call came. A ceasefire, a temporary halt in the relentless assault. At first, suspicion reigned supreme among the human ranks. What trickery was this? Why would the aliens suddenly stop when they clearly held the upper hand? But then the message arrived, broadcast across every surviving communication channel, delivered in her unmistakable melodic tone. "To the remnants of humanity," she began, her words dripping with authority yet laced with something almost tender. Your valor is commendable, your resilience unmatched. But you must see now, the fight is over. Your continued defiance serves only to prolong suffering, to sacrifice lives for a cause that cannot be won. I offer you this chance to lay down your arms, to accept my terms of surrender, not out of weakness but out of wisdom. Her voice softened, taking on a persuasive cadence that sent shivers down spines. I have offered you peace before, and though you rejected me, I hold no ill will. My goal has never been annihilation but transformation. Join me, and together we shall build a future where survival is not dictated by bloodshed. Refuse, and I will have no choice but to ensure your extinction. Choose wisely. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving silence heavy with dread. Across the battered camps, soldiers exchanged uneasy glances, their faces etched with exhaustion and fear. Some muttered curses, vowing to fight until their last breath. Others sat motionless, staring blankly at the ground, hope extinguished like a snuffed candle. Among them, the warrior clenched his fists so tightly that his nails dug into his palms, drawing blood unnoticed. A council convened hastily, leaders gathering to discuss the impossible decision before them. Arguments erupted, voices rising in desperation. Some advocated for capitulation, claiming further resistance would lead only to obliteration. Others refused to yield, insisting that surrender meant abandoning everything they had fought for. The debate raged long into the night, tempers fraying as the weight of responsibility crushed them all. When the warrior finally spoke, his voice was low but carried undeniable gravity. We're losing, he admitted bluntly, cutting through the noise. She's right, we can't win. Not like this. The room fell silent, every eye turning to him. He hated the attention, hated the burden of leadership thrust upon him, but he knew someone had to say it. Someone had to face reality. That doesn't mean we give up, another leader snapped, slamming a fist onto the table. Surrendering means bowing to her rule. Do you really think she'll keep her promises? She's an alien. We don't know what she wants. And what do we want? The warrior shot back, his voice rising. More death? More destruction? Look around you, we're dying out here. For what? Pride? Revenge? If she offers us a way out, shouldn't we at least consider it? The room exploded again, shouts overlapping in a cacophony of anger and despair. The warrior tuned them out, retreating inward. He thought of her offer, replaying it endlessly in his mind. Could she truly deliver on her promises? Or was this just another ploy to break their spirits completely? Either way, the choice loomed large, pressing down on him like a mountain. By dawn, the decision was made, not unanimously, but with grim acceptance. A delegation would meet with the alien queen to negotiate terms of surrender. As the warrior prepared to join them, he felt a strange mix of relief and shame. Relief that the killing might finally stop. Shame that he hadn't found another way. The journey to the designated meeting point was surreal. Alien ships hovered overhead, their sleek forms casting shadows over the barren landscape. Soldiers flanked the delegation, weapons lowered but ready, their expressions wary. When they reached the clearing, she was waiting, just as radiant, just as commanding as before. Her presence filled the space, making it seem smaller somehow, more intimate despite the dozens of armed guards surrounding them. You've come, she said simply, her gaze locking onto his. There was no triumph in her expression, only quiet resolve. You've chosen wisely. The leader of the delegation stepped forward, his voice trembling slightly as he addressed her. We accept your terms. On behalf of humanity, we agree to end hostilities and submit to your rule. Her smile was faint but genuine, a flicker of satisfaction crossing her features. Then let this mark the beginning of a new era, she declared, raising her hand in a gesture of finality. No more bloodshed. No more hatred. From this day forward, we are one. As cheers erupted from the alien ranks and murmurs rippled through the human contingent, the warrior stood frozen, unable to move. Defeat tasted bitter, like ash coating his tongue. But beneath the bitterness lay something else, something he didn't dare name. Hope? Surrender? Or perhaps, a chance to start anew. Yet even as the treaty was signed and the war officially declared over, doubt gnawed at him. Had they made the right choice? Or had they simply traded one kind of slavery for another? Only time would tell, and time, he realized, was no longer theirs to control.